Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today I want to make a nice spring wall hanging. The spring wall hanging comes as a kit, and it's from my girlfriend's quilt shop. It has beautiful, fun spring colors, and it combines some words, some applique, and some English paper piecing. But we don't always have to do English paper piecing the traditional hand stitching way. And I'll show you another way we can get it done. So for spring, I've chosen this really cute wall hanging. It is from my girlfriend's quilt shop, and you get the whole kit to make this wall hanging. Now, English paper piecing usually is done by hand, but I do have a way that we're going to be able to do it, well, without any hand stitching. So the kit comes with the fabric. It comes with the paper hexagons we're going to need as shapes, and it does come with some templates. Now I just take these and I photocopy them right on top of some type of a fusible web. So this paper will go right in an inkjet printer, not a laser. Lasers are too hot, it will melt the glue, so it does have to be an inkjet. And I can just photocopy it and print it right out. Of course, you can trace it if you prefer. So I have the paper on the one side and the glue on the other. So I have my fusible shapes ready to go. Now I'm going to be able to just start cutting and get this ready. Each one of these letters, we are going to build individual. Then we're going to be able to put those letters together. To make these letters, I do like to have myself organized. I have all of the pieces cut out and have placed them here. I have the lines drawn to make those stitch and flipped corners. I have all of those pieces laid out in the order of that letter. I have all of the right sides facing up, and then I will match up the corners that I need to sew. I'll be able to take my directions and my little board and sew them all at the machine. Once our letters are done, we're going to join them together with that sashing. The pattern has us make these flowers from English paper piecing. Now, English paper piecing is traditionally these hexagons where we have sewn all of these pieces together by hand. Now, if you don't like handwork, we can just fuse those, trim them out, and iron them on just like we would applique. But if we want to make it look like it's English paper pieced, we can do a combination between machine sewing and a little bit of glue. So the first thing we need to do is make our hexagon shapes. So we're going to take the paper templates that have come with them, use a fabric glue, put just a little dot on there, and that's just holding it so it doesn't slip. Put it on the back side of our fabric, and then we're going to trim around 1/4 inch. So we do have these hexagons with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Traditionally, we would glue these and go all the way around. But in this case, we're going to do a little bit of stitching. So place right sides together for 2 of those shapes. Because we've matched these up and we've trimmed them to 1/4 inch, both sides will match. Start with your needle down there and stitch and end in this area. So we're only stitching that area where the paper is. We are not going off. So for a flower that needs 6 of these hexagons, start with 3 piles and do our 3 seams. And do 1 seam on each piece. So there's that little row of stitching. And it's on both sides. We now want to press that seam open. So we have those 3 done. We're going to sew them together. And if you put them together, you're going to see that this is a hexagon shape. So I'm going to sew this seam, and this seam the same way. I'm just going to pick this up. Same thing. I'm going to start and stop right where that paper is. When this seam is done, and we open it up, we could press that seam. You can see we have one more spot where we're going to be able to stitch that together. So we'll do the one and then the other. When all those seams are stitched, we have that flower shape, but we only have that little portion of the seam stitched in each of these edges. By stopping and starting here, it means we're going to be able to fold this over. And I'm going to want to fold all of these seams back. So I'll put a little bit of glue and just fold that back. I'm going to do that to all 6 of the pieces, or for however many I'm going to be needing to make my flower. And we don't need a lot of glue, just enough to hold it over. So that seam allowance has been moved over. Now normally, this hexagon with the fabric is supposed to fit inside, but I'm just going to glue a piece underneath. So use a little bit of glue on that seam allowance and just glue that down. I'm going to try not to get onto this cardboard because I will need to remove that cardboard. From here I can trim off the extra, and I'm not worried about what it's going to look like. Once that center's on, we need to lightly glue those sides down. We're going to take it off, but the glue is going to help it so it stays into position when we do take the paper off. So put a little bit of glue, fold that edge down, so it's going to give us that nice shape. And I would recommend just a very little bit of glue. I'd rather just put a little bit on the fabric and then fold that edge over. What we're wanting is that very crisp edge. Now I'm going to go and give this a bit of a press and then let that cool down. And when we're ready to use it, we're going to go right back in and loosen that glue and take the hexagon out. So remove all of the paper. With those papers out, you can see where those seam allowances already want to go back to that shape. So take it to the iron and press those seam allowances back. So now we can do all of our flowers. I have all of my components now done, and I'm ready to put the wall hanging together. I also have an interfacing. This is a fusible interfacing. When you feel it, one side will have some bumps on it and the other side will feel very smooth. The bump side is an adhesive. So I want to take this adhesive and iron it onto the back of that big piece of fabric. Once those are fused together, I'm going to be able to join my words and that panel together. And you can really see how that stabilizer has given it that extra weight, and it will really hold those applique shapes nicely. I did photocopy that one on the back so I could tape them together to make one long piece. The first thing I want to do is fuse on the stems and the leaves. Then I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to stitch them down. The reason is I do want some of the stems to go under this vase. So when I look at the pattern, I do have some edges that go underneath. And I can peek underneath and see what number corresponds with my applique shapes. So I can take off that paper. I know that I have stem 1, and I can see it. I have a piece that's going to go underneath that vase and a piece that's going to go underneath the flower. So once it's in place, I can fuse number 1 down. I'm going to find number 2, put that down. Number 3, I'm going to do all of the stems first. Now I can cut out my leaves and put the leaves in place. And I'm going to fuse those down. Once I have those stems and leaves done, I will take it to the machine and applique these pieces down. Now you can use a satin stitch, a blanket stitch, whatever you're comfortable with, you can applique your pieces down. I did a blanket stitch around the leaves and those stems. Now I'm going to be able to put that vase on. And I can fuse that on and stitch around. The last thing we need to do is now add on our English paper piecing. Our little flowers can now be put on. Now we do not have a fusible web like we do the leaves and the stems, so we're going to have to stitch them down. So we're going to be able to place those down and put a couple of pins. From there, we can do a straight stitch and stitch right along the outside edge and stitch around that center. We only glued that center down, so we now need to anchor it down. So we're going to stitch all of our flowers down using just a straight stitch. Once we've machine stitched those down, at a quick glance, they really do look like we've done traditional English paper piecing. Spring wall hanging is done and it's ready to be quilted. It was really fun combining those letters, that traditional English paper piecing, and the fusible applique. And the English paper piecing, you could do it the traditional way where you would hand stitch it together, or if you want, you can just fuse those pieces on. There's always more than one way to get a project done. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I do have a newsletter. It's free under Sew Very Easy. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.